Some of the most ruthless and dangerous warriors the Imperium of Man has to offer come from the temples of the Officio Assassinorum. The Imperial Assassins are the High Lord's sharpest blade. They possess the necessary resources to execute their prey with precision and cunning like no other Imperial military force. If an apostate Cardinal attempts to hide behind a sector-wide traitor armada, the Temple Assassin will find him, cut off his balls, and then slit his throat. If a Xeno warlord wraps himself up with fortifications and bodyguards, the assassin will find a way to slaughter him in his own lair. Such powers are bestowed onto Imperial assassins because they are tried and tested servants of the Emperor of mankind. But every now and then, even these well-disciplined individuals will allow temptation and arrogance to take over their minds, and these supremely honed killing machines become rogue assassins, answering to no one but themselves. And worst of all, they become the Imperium's worst enemy, butchering their way out of the Assassinorum control and causing mayhem in the process. And I know what you're asking, how could such a prestigious warrior turn their back on the Imperium and the Emperor they're supposed to protect? And the reason for that lies in how horrible their life is. The sad truth of an assassin begins in their adolescence. You see, the majority of these future expert executioners, or orphans, often taken days, if not moments, before their whole family's death. While the worlds of the Imperium are filled with stray children, those that come from Imperial families are taken in by the Schola Progenium, whether they are daughters of Imperial Guard officers killed on the battlefield, or sons of Imperial administrators lost in the far reaches of space. These abandoned children are taken in and trained to become the backbone of Imperial society, as servants of the various branches of the Adeptus Terra. Some will go on to become distinguished Militarum Tempestus Scions, the elite of the Imperial Guard. Others will become famous inquisitors, or at least inquisitorial acolytes. But those that show a sign of malice towards their fellow man will be separated from the pack, never to be heard from again. These children will always be those that demonstrate an affinity for murder, whether they were born with this predisposition for slaughter, or their circumstances cause them to grow a sadistic desire to kill. These children will have their minds, body, and soul disciplined in the hopes that their vicious nature can be used by the Officio Assassinorum. An assassin's training begins even before the Assassinorum ships arrive on Terra, with the Officio instructors testing their prospective pupils mercilessly. The recruits must survive on limited food. They are given rations slightly below what a normal person would need to survive. How they will handle the malnutrition is a test in and of itself. The restriction of resources sometimes even consists of restricting the air they breathe. Their living quarters will be purposefully suffocated for solar days at a time, causing the weaker recruits to repeatedly pass out and eventually die. After the first week, instructors will survey the recruits, making sure to separate the dead from the comatose and disposing of the bodies before they are cannibalized by the more resilient recruits. Those that adapt to the harsh conditions will be pushed further when they are forced to fight each other in armed and unarmed combat. These battles will start off simple enough, but the closer the ship gets to their destination, the more challenging the duels will become. The recruits will be forced to fight in all manner of conditions, from total darkness to blinding light, zero gravity to crushing weight, muggy heat to freezing cold. By the time they arrive, there may only be a tenth of the prospective assassins left. If the instructors see the recruits barely clinging to life, they may deem every recruit unworthy and execute them all on the spot. Upon arrival at Holy Terra, the surviving initiates begin the next stage of their training. Sailing past the spaceborne basilicas, immense queues of pilgrim craft, and the military cordons that congest Terra's outer orbit, they are carried down into the Temple Assassinorum under the most advanced of shrouding protocols. In the subterranean safe houses, these new recruits are divided amongst the hidden temples of the Officio Assassinorum. Each temple has its own ancient ways and mysteries, and each specializes in a different aspect of the art of murder. There the initiates train for a full decade under the command of a Lord Assassin. For recruits entering the Callidus Temple, their souls will be tested when they eventually learn of the existence of the ruinous powers of chaos. The Callidus Assassins are experts at eradicating Chaos Cult leaders. In order to do this, most assassins are required to infiltrate the Chaos Cult, which means living amongst Chaos worshippers. A future Callidus assassin must not only be effective enough to terminate the target, but also possess the utmost devotion to the Emperor of mankind, as to not fall prey to the temptations of the Chaos Gods while masquerading as a cultist. How this loyalty is ingrained in the minds of an assassin varies, but for most Callidus recruits, it means daily prayer along with self-flagellation. This self-deprecation begins early on. Instructors will force initiates to crawl on their knees and recite Imperial Creed hymns until the bare bone of their knees scrape on the Ferrocrete floor and trails of blood mark the recruit's path of suffering. The pain of these types of exercises demonstrates the recruit's devotion to the Emperor of mankind and acts as a reminder of the suffering they will face if they turn away from his light. Callidus assassins are also well known for their ability to impersonate almost any humanoid creature by using polymorph, a specialized drug that allows the assassin to take on the look of anyone they choose. This can be as simple as a beautiful young woman or as elaborate as a crippled old man. The temple has even taken it a step further by implanting recruits with a range of surgical implants to allow Callidus assassins to mimic members of alien races, like the Crude and the Eldar. These implants consist of flexed cartilage and hardened synth skin, similar to that used in the Black Carapace gene seed organ of the Space Marines. When the assassin is in their normal form, these implants lie dormant under their flesh within their bones. It is only when the polymorphine is injected that these implants react to the stimulants within the drug and transform into a genetically encoded shape that allows the assassin to restructure their body into the grotesque and hunched form of an orc, or the thin and graceful form of an Eldari. The implants are not surgically embedded in one go, and a recruit must experience the long and grueling process of not only implantation, but also the painful task of learning to live with the implants. Over the centuries, the Callidus Temple has come to learn that a female recruit is more capable of surviving these grafts. They've realized that the female body and psyche is biologically predisposed to enduring higher levels of pain, making female Callidus recruits better chameleons than men. As such, almost all Callidus assassins are actually women, regardless of who they are trying to impersonate. Another class of assassin that will forever be altered by their training is the Eversor assassins. These killers specialize in shock and terror tactics, instilling fear of Imperial retribution into the hearts and minds of all those who hold positions of power in the Imperium of Man. Unlike other assassins, these murderers take their time out on the field, often not only having one target, but a mission to create as much destruction as possible to an entire organization. To have the energy and raw power to successfully sow this much fear on a target, the killers must never rest, never sleep, and never stop giving rise to slaughter. They are pumped with special cocktails of combat-enhancing drugs that are designed to instill psychotic rage into the assassin, and to further enhance their physical capabilities, to the point that it strains even their enhanced physiologies. Knowing how physically straining their missions will be, the temple begins enhancing the recruits' immune systems right away. It goes beyond the normal human standards so that they can survive the sheer toxicity of the combat drugs they will constantly be infused with. Fresh recruits will go through their first year in an intoxicated mist of combat drugs. They will get so incredibly high that they will run the risk of losing a grasp on reality. Hallucinations will get so severe that a recruit's body will simply enter a coma to deal with the shock. Those that survive this phase will wake up to a shortened lifespan, a horrible effect caused by the cocktail of drugs flowing through their bodies. They will then move on to the cybernetic enhancement phase, where they will be implanted with a series of painful bionics that will turn them into the perfect killing machine. By the time the training is over, an Eversor assassin will be fully addicted to the harsh regime of combat drugs, to the point where if the infusion ever stops, the assassin will likely die from the agonizing withdrawal symptoms, but at that point, the killer's life is no longer their own. To combat this dependency and the shortened lifespan, the temple will have these new recruits enter cryosuspension. Each assassin is kept in cryostasis aboard very special and very secret starships and space stations that are placed all across the Imperium in highly secure locations and kept on constant alert. Only when the direct order is received from the High Lords of Terra, to the Grand Master of the Assassins of the Officio Assassinorum, does the operative fully awaken. Once a mission has been assigned, an Eversor assassin is transferred from his cryogenic crypt into a specially designed one-man drop pod. The assassin remains in stasis this entire time, while direct cybernetic neural links within the pod feed all the relevant mission details directly into the neural cortex. When the Temple's starship has come out of the warp near the target planet, the drop pod's fully automated system begins to awaken the assassin from stasis and prepare his body with the necessary suit of combat drugs that best fit the mission profile. By the time the drop pod reaches the surface of the target world, the Eversor assassin has fully awoken and been equipped to carry out the operation. Due to the use of cryosuspension to keep the assassin alive, an Eversor Temple assassin loses all grasp of time. He or she has no idea how long it's been since they were last awakened. It could have been a few solar decades, or even Terran centuries since the last time they were allowed to live. Worst of all for an Eversor assassin is if the assassin is slain in combat. The drugs flowing through their body will react violently to the metabolic onset of death and cause the Eversor's corpse to simply explode. If the assassin does survive the mission, a dark slumber awaits him. Not all assassin recruits come from the School of Progenium, however. The Culexus Temple works with the dreaded black ships to collect their recruits. The temple specializes in the assassination of psychically powerful leaders, and as such, they need assassins born with the innate ability to counteract the psychic powers controlled by their prey. To do this, they recruit child prisoners who possess the feared pariah gene, often called black souls or simply the soulless. These recruits have a rare mutation that not only causes them to lack any psychic presence in the warp, but also nullify any warp effects around them. Their aura of otherness is so powerful that normal humans find it impossible to be in their presence. Before their life with the temple, they were treated with disgust, not because of any action they caused, but simply out of human nature. Treated like outcasts, these future assassins were probably mistreated as children and kicked out as soon as possible by their own parents. As the living embodiment of the worst possible nightmares for any psychically gifted being, even before they are trained, some recruits would have been hunted down by psychically powerful members of the Imperium before being captured by the black ships. Even the Vindicare assassin, which arguably has the least tragic life, must face the horrible realities of an assassin. The Vindicare are often employed in eliminating individuals for the Imperium who are suspected of harboring demonic entities. The hope is that they can eliminate the host before the demon is able to manifest itself in the material plane. Like almost all killers, the Vindicare recruits are subjected to daily battles with bone-wrenching exercise engines. They must fight in deadly bouts with horrendous monsters to prepare themselves for the horrors that they must eliminate should their shot miss its mark. Initiates must survive lengthy courses of psycho-indoctrination and aggressive hypnosis to prepare their minds for the terrors of the warp. Assassins must undergo physical tests of ever-escalating severity and digest vast quantities of information about the Imperium that will soon be their hunting ground. They must train to the point where the Vindicare signature weapon, the Exodus rifle, is an extension of their own being. Like all assassins, they must accept that their lives are not their own, but rather they are mere weapons to destroy the enemies of mankind. And these are the only horrible realities of the assassin documented in Imperial records. It is known that the Officio Assassinorum hides many secrets in its dark and mysterious temples. The hidden orders of the Assassinorum conceals masterpieces of destruction, some of which were devised by the Primarchs, Malcador the hero, and even the Emperor himself. Truly, it is said that each temple houses 1,000 deaths and more.
And now that we know how horrible the life of an Imperial assassin is, let's take a look at actual rogue assassins.
Rogue assassins are a rarity within the Imperium of Man. It is no mistake that these highly trained warriors are borderline Imperial drones, psycho-indoctrinated to act to the will of the Imperial masters, with zero liberties of their own. But that's not to say that assassins don't rebel against the Officio Assassinorum. After all, they are required to have enough autonomy to survive behind enemy lines and have the intellect to complete their missions. What might drive the assassin to betray the Imperium is similar to the corruption of any other faction. The power of chaos taking advantage of an unforeseen weakness, deeply rooted egotism that is heightened as the assassin grows stronger than his master, or the simple desire to be free. When an Imperial assassin goes rogue, it is the responsibility of its temple to eliminate that traitor by any means necessary. This means that it's the rogue's comrades who will quickly be on his trail, using the same hunting methods that the runaway was taught. This leads to a difficult pursuit, as the rogue always has the upper hand against their former peers, deconstructing the assassin's hunting methods and either getting away or killing the pursuing assassin. When this occurs, the temple might request the aid from another temple, as each assassin temple has its own unique methods of eliminating its quarry. Very few Imperial records exist of rogue assassins. Whether this is an intentional censure by the Officio Sissonorum or proof that few rogue assassins have actually existed, it's completely unknown. The records that do exist showcase the dangers these renegades possess to the Imperium of Man. The infamous rogue Callidus assassin Aid Vane grew up on the underhive of the Perseus hive on the planet of Olympus. Found by the Inquisitors at the age of 12, she was given over to the Officio Sissonorum for testing to see if she was a suitable candidate for the Callidus Temple. She passed the physical test easily, and her intelligence was clearly superior to most of the Imperium's inhabitants. There were doubts about her loyalty, but the masters of the temple believed that through years of arduous training, this could easily be overcome. Aid continued to be rebellious and selfish, and at the age of 17 it was likely that she would be quietly killed, considered unsuitable for further training. Though she had perfected many of the skills required to be a Callidus, and had even begun to successfully use the shape-altering drug polymorphine, her dubious motives had become too much of a worry for the leaders of the Callidus Temple. Her tale would have simply ended there had she not fallen under the care of the Thorian Inquisitor Darin, who intended to use her in a secret experiment involving the development of a new drug known as hyperpolymorphine that was intended to artificially create a vessel for the rebirth of the Emperor Incarnate. Surviving the experimental sessions, her own ruthless determination allowed her to master the side effects of the hyperpolymorphine. Using the powers granted to her by the effects of the experimental drug, Aid managed to escape. She now survives as a freelance assassin, working for Imperial commanders with political ambitions, and has even worked alongside Xenos and some Chaos cults, if the pay is right. Her dependence on certain stabilizing elixirs has forced Aid to raid Adeptus Mechanicus facilities in order to acquire sufficient drugs to preserve her life. These raids have provided a trail to her whereabouts for her main adversary, the Inquisitor Lord Antigonus Bolorendin. The Inquisitor's concern is not only the acts of murder and mayhem that she causes, but also the tactical threat her existence possesses for the Imperium at large. While Aid lives, anti-Imperial forces could capture her and learn many of the secrets of the Callidus Temple and the Inquisition. Should knowledge of how to manufacture and use polymorphine be learned by the Emperor's enemies, it could cause untold damage, while the location of the Assassin's Temple outpost is a closely guarded secret. And then there's Jarek, who was an infamous rogue Callidus assassin who was active during the War of Vindication, which took place shortly after the death of the renegade High Lord Goge Vandire during the Age of Apostasy's Reign of Blood in the early 36th millennium. Vandire had managed to corrupt many within the Officio Sissonorum, just as he had bribed and blackmailed his way through the other Imperial Adepta. Foremost amongst Vandire's agents was Jarek. Using polymorphine, Jarek had assassinated the true Grand Master of the Officio Sissonorum and assumed his identity. However, unbeknownst to Jarek, the true Grand Master had expected such a plot and had a decoy assassin take his place in his chambers. As such, Jarek had not killed the true Grand Master, who secretly mustered those still loyal to him and the Emperor to fight against the usurper. A heinous battle raged within the Imperial Palace itself, amongst the various factions of the assassins, as they brought their terrible skills to war. The ancient arsenals of the Officio Sissonorum were open, and terrifying weapons, long banned by the Senatorum Imperialis, were brought to bear by the assassins on both sides. They were used against each other, and in the end, the true Grand Master assassinated Jarek and disappeared into a self-imposed exile. After the conclusion of the Wars of Vindication, the hidden order of the Inquisition known as the Ordo Sicarius was set up to police the activities of the Officio Sissonorum. The various temples were split up and scattered to separate locations throughout the galaxy, in order to ensure that if one should fall to Xeno influence, possession, or heresy, others would remain untainted. Other rules were also put into place to ensure that no single individual could abuse wielding the power of the Officio Sissonorum for their own ambition.
And that's our deep dive on the terrifying realities of an Imperial assassin. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit the like button, share with your friends. If you want to support the channel, you can on Patreon, and let me know what other topics you guys want me to talk about. We post every single day. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.